We're live. It is Monday, January the 6th, 2025. And I am here to discuss the issue and issues that have arisen that you're not going to read about in the Chronicle or in the Mercury News, in this instance having to do with the situation involving Ron Owens. And Ron Owens, who I talked about the other night, no doubt a legend, no doubt a very special, a very prominent person in Bay Area media, having spent 4 decades on radio at KGO, one of the most special people, a person that I had a special, unique relationship with as a caller and then as a friend. And then, things evolved that I'm not really here to talk about, that have nothing to do with what I'm about to talk about. But suffice to say, I knew Ron pretty well. Not that well, but well enough to talk about certain things. Now, I finally read the Chronicle piece and the Mercury News. And I'm going to make a central series of points in what is not being reported, what is not being talked about. Although I will tell you, very much talked about underneath and behind the scenes that I've got to talk about, because that's why you come here. I've had many of your emails. People have chided me about not talking about this, and it's very difficult. It's very awkward, to say the least. But let me give you some upfront information, some of which you probably already know. Ron Owens is in a dicey financial situation, enough so to where he is being, how can I put this? He's set up through his daughter, through his family, a GoFundMe page, which as of today, I just looked, has raised about $89,000. The initial goal was 60. It's now at $89,000. We know that. Okay. Ron has had some serious health setbacks, which I knew about, not to the extent that it was reported, but I knew kind of about a lot of the things. The Parkinson's, didn't know about the strokes, didn't know about the bout with colon cancer and all that. So we know that. And most of these articles, I skimmed them, but I read enough. I read enough where I didn't have to read more, that don't go into detail. Here's the awkward thing. Look, I knew very, very well, and know very, very well. And this is a subject matter that was not delved into deeply with regards to Ron. And that is his gambling problem. And that I thought that he went away from that years ago and that he had licked it, but apparently he did not. And that even though he was making a lot of money by pretty, normal media standards, one of the highest paid earners in San Francisco media, getting a little over $1 million for quite a lengthy amount of time, and earned every damn penny of it. But even with all that money made, in terms of being a talk show host, doing commercials, that kind of a thing, other sources of income, apparently not enough to cover what now involves medical situations, even though he had a tremendous pension from American Federation of Radio TV Employees, AFTRA, the union pension that he gets. But even with all that, could not cover hospital costs and that kind of a thing. But that's not one of the issues I want to talk about. I have to talk about. I would feel, And a lot of you, and forgive me for talking in fragments here, but you'll understand when I tell you what I'm going to tell you, have chided me, many of you, saying, hey, you're not giving the full story, Rich. That's why we come and watch you. You're not discussing. And certainly the writers who wrote the pieces in the Chronicle and in the Mercury News did not go into deeply about this matter. And that has to do with a few things. The situation involving Ronn's gambling habits, which were a lot more irksome than I knew about, but I knew about. And the situation involving his daughter, one of his daughters, and her legal issues having to do with harassment and accusing certain people, men, of 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 various personal infractions, shall we say, and that not being talked about or not being delved into deeply in these articles. These articles largely just talked about the fact that Ron was a media giant and quoted him one small quote about now life has given him some various issues and so we say Rubik's cube of financial matters, and he doesn't have the money to take care of some of these expenses. Okay, but it doesn't really delve deeply into the gambling. Doesn't delve deeply into his daughter's situation with regards to accusations, some of which are not just civil matters now, but some of which are possibly going to a criminal indictment in Arizona. Now, again, I want to emphasize something here. I am giving you, and I'm not patting myself on the back. Please don't take this the wrong way. I'm talking about it in the manner like this, and forgive me if I appear to be tiptoeing because I'm not. But I myself, I'm trying to give you what is being talked about now in a lot of areas, not just professional, not just friend areas with people that know Ron, but behind the scenes also, who only knew Ron through his position as a KGO talk show host. And that is what's being conveyed to me, and which is largely why I'm here talking about all this, is the fact that many people, many of whom sent me stories and emails and so forth, that we're not getting the whole story. We're not getting the whole story. And a lot of people who don't know the whole story are the same people, many of whom are on fixed incomes, retirement age people who are sending a lot of money, or even if they're sending not a lot of money, are still sending money to aid the GoFundMe page, which again is now nearing $90,000. The initial goal was to get 60,000. It's now at about 89,000 and change. It probably will eclipse 90,000 whenever, but it's up there. But many of you have told me story's not out. And I looked over the piece in the Chronicle and I looked over the piece in the Mercury News. And again, this information, this is not, scant information. This is not information coming from, questionable sources. This is real information having to do with gambling and Ron's affliction, which may have accelerated his position of not being able to pay bills, not being able to cover possibly potential legal bills in the form of an attorney for his daughter and for not just for the hospital expenses, but the gambling expenses. Now, what that entails, I don't know. I think the only person that knows is Ron himself. But we didn't get that in the Chronicle. We had some areas which were perhaps you could conclude to the fact that he had gambling issues. It doesn't really go into detail. In fact, it's not even talked about. He doesn't discuss that. Same thing in the Mercury News piece. Some of you have even told me or presented the possibility that this whole thing was a PR campaign to cover not just the massive, and they are massive, I don't know specifically, but I do know medical costs are humongous. That's in any environment. But that this was a PR campaign basically to cover that, but to also cover other things like his gambling debts, Ron Owens, like his pending issues, legal and otherwise, with his daughter, which frankly I was somewhat aware of, but not fully aware of. And look, and that's why I'm here. I'm not trying to be holier than thou, and I'm not trying to present to you issues or information that I know exclusively, because I don't. I know something, and I've addressed that. I knew he had a gambling problem. I thought he had basically got it beyond in the past tense, that he had licked it. I since know he did not. And once he'd been retired, he's not making the kind of money, although he does get a good pension, does get a very, very generous pension, and you know, that covers his health care. He's not anyway making the over $1 million that he was making in his height of popularity and all that. And this only comes out because of the articles. And I knew he was in declining health. I didn't know what state he was in, or present tense, what state he is in now. They quoted him in the article in the Chronicle. He made a comment on December 31st. Well, that was what, about a week ago? So presumably he's lucid. I understand the situation with the cancer and the strokes could make you quite the opposite. And I want to stress, this is so important. I am doing this because I don't want to put my head under the pillow. I think this is fair game to talk about this, because it's not just me. It's come to my attention with all of this that there perhaps, underline the word perhaps, but there's a lot of information out there that was not put forth in those articles in both the Chronicle and the Mercury News. I'm going to save my own venom, which I currently have towards the Chronicle, less so in the case of the Mercury News. They're owned by the Bang Papers, Bay Area News Group, and try to be as objective as possible. But you did not get an accurate portrayal in those pieces. There weren't the issues that I've just described that are not put forth in those articles. And frankly, that to me, there's something there that's not right. And it was conveyed to me by many of you that there are people out there donating to the GoFundMe that are not aware of that, not to mention the fact that a lot of these people who did follow Ron are people that are retired, that have very limited means of income themselves, that are on fixed incomes, and that they should know. They should know about these factors and are not being given the entire truth. And that's not right either. And I'm not saying, I'm not indicting anybody, no pun intended. I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying that there's been some false advertising. I'll let you ponder that and make your own assessment. What I am here is to say that the entire story was not given. That are several points and several, shall we say, bullet points that were not addressed in both articles. And that the information coming my way is that perhaps This was a PR campaign, a absolutely intentional way of getting the word out. And I don't know if it's just Ron, or if it's his wife, or if it's his daughter, or if it's all of the above or none of the above. But it had to have been notified to these various writers about the situation, and that they didn't include this in their articles. And that, to me, if that's true, that's journalistic malpractice. That indeed that should be talked about. Should have been in the article. Some people say, "Well, why are we being led to believe it strictly has to do with his medical bills, nothing else?" Good question. Fair question. Why wasn't that brought out? There's not a lot of detail on the gambling aspect, or there's a real sort of innocuous mentioning about his daughter's travails. I did not know, frankly. I'd heard that his daughter, and he's got two daughters, but this daughter, the youngest, that she is being scrutinized for the allegations in Maricopa County. That's in the county in which he lives, Scottsdale, in suburban Phoenix, Arizona. That's kind of glossed over. So we don't know a lot about that. And again, various people who have donated don't know about that. But there are prominent people, include, by the way, folks, the author himself on the Chronicle piece, who has a connection to Ron, being the fact that Ron had him on as a guest, I believe. But I'm just thinking out loud, and I'm basing what I'm thinking out loud on your information that was provided to me. Now, if you have information that you think is vital, and you can, factualize it and make it pertinent to what was put forth, but not put forth in a full disclosure area, by all means, yes, email me at rich.lieberman@gmail.com. You can contact me. I'm on Twitter or X. Send me a tweet. If you want to DM me, follow me. And if you could send me a direct message, or you can even text me, 415-999, that's 3 9s, 4454. Text me. And I'll look at everything like I have all day today and yesterday. And let me say other things. I may have talked about this already. I've talked about this with various people. People started bitching and moaning at me because my initial broadcast about this on last Friday night, I was back and forth saying how wonderful a person Ron Owens was. I grew up listening to Ron. I remember when he first started at KGO. Loved him. Didn't know much about him. I mean, it was this guy from the East Coast, worked in Cleveland and Miami and, Atlanta, and come to San Francisco. That's all I knew of Ron. I also talked about the fact that, to me, he was one of the great. I saw it right away. I wasn't forecasting. I was a kid. Loved listening to him. Couldn't wait to listen to Ron Owens on KGO. He became the giant that he became, with interviews and entertainment and features that he did on the air, his ability to interview and to be funny at times and poignant, and to do great back and forths with guests, like some of San Francisco's elite politicians, celebrities, national, going to Washington, doing talk shows there, in Sacramento and the Middle East and all over the place. He became huge, a fixture. Did he ever? And he did. And why not? And I talked about that. I got to meet him. I went over that. I became what I thought was a close friend. Not real close enough to go to his house, where he lived in San Francisco in the Marina District early on, and be there when he met Jan Black, way back in 1976 when I was 14 years old, and knowing him well enough that if I called him on the week, hey, Ron, I want to come by, you mind, and watch the show. Come on over, Rock Rich. He called me Rock Rich. I knew him pretty well. We all knew him. And I hate to even talk about him in the past tense. He's alive, for all I know. I don't know what state he's in, but he's alive. So consider that aspect, but also consider the other. What I do here is one of the reasons why you come here. And not to sound sanctimonious, I see a lot of you are on the YouTube page now. I'm going to be here for a while. I'm not going anywhere for now because I invite those of you who want to get in contact with me. You know how to get in contact with me. And this is not to ask for, BS, because I don't just throw stuff on the air. I really do practice an old journalistic standard from way on back and to this day. I try to see if there's any truth in this, in anything, whether I get a tip, whether I get whatever, TV station, radio station, internet, newspaper, what have you. This involves a close friend. Now, I had a very public divorce with Ron. I chided Ron, called him out, I belittled him, I criticized him in 2011, 14 years ago. My God, seemed that long ago. When KGO was basically put out to pasture by Cumulus, when they destroyed, and what I said they would eventually murder, my words, KGO, which they did. I chided Ron, belittled him because I thought he sold out, because I thought on that day where he wasn't supposed to be on the air that he acted very sophomorically. I'm being diplomatic. And I see your comments here. I'm not ignoring you guys. Just bear with me because I'm going to get to a lot of this. But I basically railed Ron for years. Called him a selfish schmuck and a putz and all these things. How could you do that? I said, Ron, what the hell? You got less to lose or more to lose. Excuse me, get it right. How could you be that way? And now, to some degree, I understand. In his mind, he needed that job. Maybe he thought he was going to get fired. Maybe he thought Cumulus was going to somehow try to get rid of him. And now, because of this issue, the main thing being the gambling. The gambling, yeah. And I knew he liked to go to the racetracks. Hell, he did ads for Golden Gate Fields. But I also thought that he had licked it. Naivete setting in, as foolish as this may sound, I really did believe that. I didn't know it was as bad as I've heard now. But nevertheless, I knew he went to a place, San Francisco, the old money, it's called the Concordia Club. He went to a whole bunch of places, but namely the Concordia Club. And he played cards. I didn't know the extent of the gambling that was taking place there, but I knew. I didn't make a big deal about it because it frankly didn't affect me and I didn't understand. And I was, but I knew. And now it all makes sense. And he's not making, obviously, for years now, he's not making the over $1 million that he was getting from KGO. He retired. Basically, it's been now almost 10 years. I think 2016, somewhere around there. But, when you retire, you don't get the money that you're used to getting. And it makes sense now with all these expenses, with what's taking place, not all just medical. But I do think that these writers in the Chronicle, in the Mercury News, should have talked about this. They did not. Again, quote me. I think that's journalistic malpractice. And when it's been conveyed to me by many of you that a lot of these people that are donating money to the GoFundMe, which they have every right to do, are people that are on fixed incomes, retired people, I'm sure not of them, all of them are on retired incomes. Some of them could just be people that want to help. That's all well and good. I'm not here to vilify anybody. I'm just bringing out information that should have been put out. We're not getting the whole picture here. And again, I've been accused of basically kissing Ron's ass, figurative terms, which I certainly wasn't the other night when I glorified him, when I described to many of you my friendship with Ron, how we went to baseball games, he took me to the Giants games, we went, hung out together, had breakfast with him many a times on Union Street, a place called La Cucina, which he talked about. I wasn't that close, but I was close enough. So this is very hard for me. But by ignoring all of this, then I'm not trying to sound holier than thou and become self-righteous. By ignoring all this, then I do a disservice to you folks too. And Ron may be in a situation, all of the above. I'm not saying don't help somebody out. I've never been in a gambling situation like that. I understand, I know about people like Pete Rose. There was a football player from the 70s named Art Schlichter. Remember him? Was it Schlichter? Art Schlichter. Anyway, it's Ohio State. Big time athlete, was drafted high, had a severe gambling problem. Gambling is a sickness, it's an addiction. So I'm not vilifying Ron by any chance. I'm sort of in the middle with all this. But I do believe that without talking about this, without even mentioning it and writing about it in those articles, and if so, even in a scant manner, that's not right either. And it needs to be put out. And many of you, now I see this whole set of people on YouTube talking about this. And I'm sure I'm going to be vilified by some folks, both sides. That I'm shouldn't talk about this. And then there is are going to say that I'm much too nice to Ron. And then I'll be the opposite end of people saying that I shouldn't even bring this up. No, that's not right either. Because several of you, and I've been looking at emails all morning long. I mean, I haven't done a broadcast. Now I'm doing the broadcast. I made several calls to a lot of people, media people, and I'm not going to identify them because most of them don't want to be identified, who know about this. And I'm not just, what's the word? I'm not doing this to, how's the word? Trying to think of a certain word. Just to look, I'm speculating. Of course I am. But I think I'm trying to handle this. It's an awkward situation by not discussing it. And I'm sure there are people out there who are friends of Ron, who work in media, who weren't involved in the writing of the pieces in the Chronicle and the Mercury News, who are discussed this privately, of course. But I'm a public figure. I don't say that with an egotistical end. I am. People know me. Some people don't. Some people do. And they also knew that two things. I lampooned and belittled and criticized Ron Owens because of the manner in which he held the KGO murder years ago. About a year ago, I came on here. This is before all this had broken, this articles. And I wanted to say to Ron, look, we had issues. I did. I'm sorry in that regard. I may have overdid it, Ron. I want to remember you. And this was obviously when he's still alive, for the good work that you did as a talk show host, as a KGO personality, as somebody I knew not that well, but well enough to where you did a lot of good and you entertain people, you inform people, and you're a mensch kind of a thing. And I'm sorry I went a little overboard, Ron Owens, in criticizing you. I probably shouldn't acted in certain ways, which I did. I can't erase the past, so to speak. And I wanted it to be known. And he responded, you know, somebody that I was look up. If you guys don't know Cousin Brucey, still alive. This New York-based disc jockey was a jovial guy, and he had a way about doing things. And Ron Owens to me was a Cousin Brucey, a father figure too. Nothing to do with radio. Somebody I looked up to, my hero, loved him. I mentioned, went up and saw him in Santa Rosa the very, very, very first year he was in the Bay Area. Took my mother up. I was 13-year-old, wide-eyed and all that. 14, 1976. We met in Santa Rosa. I wore a T-shirt, said Rock Rich. And that was the beginning of a really, really long friendship. I got to know him when I was young. And he was, 30 years old when he came to the Bay Area. And folks, if I'm repeating myself, I so apologize. It is so hard for me to think now that we're in the situation that he's in. It's difficult. And look, I knew he had a huge ego, and he spells his name Ronn, even himself acknowledged the fact, and he's still alive. I want to put him in the past tense. The Ron, Ronn, was done on his part. He said it's an affectation. Could have been Ron, which most people know most people spell Ron. He spelled it Ronn. I know his last name. He chose his stage name, so to speak. And just a very talented person. But and this whole thing with the medical bills and everything, and frankly, I didn't know much about the daughter. I'd heard things, and I'm not speaking ill of his daughter, who's got all these accusations, and it's all public knowledge. So I'm not speaking ill of, or bringing something up that isn't already known. I'd heard rumors. I've been talking to Ron for years, but I knew about the deal with his daughter. Not that it got this compelling in a sort of a negative way. And he's got possibilities, legal issues, which probably brings upon hiring a very prominent lawyer, which costs money, and the health issues, which obviously, again, I am totally, I know he got a good pension from AFTRA, and that's supposed to cover all the medical costs and all that. So I won't get into that. I don't know. But the thing with the gambling disturbs me. And I don't call him out. I don't belittle him because of the gambling. It's an addiction. It's a sickness. The chickens have come home to roost. Obviously, you get to a point where you can't cover, and it's awkward, and you feel, I've been in this situation, not to this extent, but if he truly, truly, and it's not his fault, if this was a PR campaign, these articles, and these are friends of his, I know one guy is, and if that is not put forth in the article like it was not, and you have people donating money who are living very modestly, shall we say, then that doesn't work in my world. That smells to high heaven. And the fact that these guys, if they didn't know, they should have known, these writers. And this should be made public. Sorry. And I was chided on that because, frankly, most of it, I didn't even know. But other areas I did know and I chose to, look the other way kind of a thing. If that was the image I presented, then shame on me in that regard. I'm not here to be a Boy Scout. I never have been. But in this matter, I knew some issues that I didn't immediately bring up and I should have, but I didn't know. And I talked to a whole lot of people for background on this research. I've been on the phone for a good day and a half. And a lot of these people are very sensitive too. Some people knew, some people didn't know. I'm talking about the gambling. I know people that saw Ron playing cards at the Concordia Club. I knew about it. I didn't know it got to the point where it got. But again, had this been brought out, it doesn't have to be into a lengthy manifesto. That's one thing. But the fact that they being these writers, ignored all of that pretty much and didn't ask Ron directly, not that maybe it wouldn't have mattered. Maybe it would have been okay. Maybe some people would have still donated. And that's up to you guys. That's one thing. But when it's not put out, I'm sorry. That's not germane. That's not real. That's not right. And part of my own awkwardness with this, folks, and a lot of you, I see you're out there, is most of my relationship with the Chronicle isn't exactly, lovey dovey. I've chided them, has nothing to do with the Ron Owens deal, of lifting stuff, of taking material, of not giving me credit. And that's a whole different area. And I basically criticize them, whether it's SF Gate or their actual sfchronicle.com. So, you have to kind of separate both. And that's hard to do when my thoughts and my portrayal of the Chronicle are so out there. So, I'm just trying to be as factual and as unbiased as possible. Common journalism rule. You have to bring out pretty much everything. There are things you could talk about and discuss and put forth in an article, but when it has to do with this matter and you don't convey all the information, especially when you're plugging a GoFundMe, I'm sorry, that stings to high heaven. And I am bringing that out because I have to. It may not be Ron's fault. And as far as the PR campaign, if there are people besides Ron, maybe his daughter, maybe his wife, maybe him, maybe all of the above, and you don't put forth that information, then that's not right either. So, folks, I am not trying to tiptoe around. I'm trying to be as devil's advocate as possible, both sides. But, and again, I'm repeating myself ad nauseum. I apologize. I'm thinking out loud. I don't write much anymore. I talk. And if you have information that is pertinent to all this that you think should be out there, and if you don't want to be identified, I understand that. I'm not going to identify if you're a source, a tipster, what have you, as long as the information is factual. And by the way, I'm not just going to publicize it. If it's pertinent to the story, if there's encounters out there that you've had, if I can prove it, if I can factualize it, confirm it, okay, send it to me. I gave you my email address, rich.lieberman@gmail.com. You can text me 415 999 39s 4454. I gave my email address. And look, in a matter like this, where you have a public person and I didn't know he had the strokes. I didn't know he had the bout with colon cancer. I knew about, as we all did, the Parkinson's diagnosis. It was years and years ago that prompted they had that experimental surgery with his brain, which seemed to have worked early on. But as you get older, as you become, you know, he's 79 years old. It and you have other medical issues, then it can become a lot more irksome and all that. So, and I feel, as I've said, and I'm not trying to be holier than thou. I'm trying to present both sides. Those other factors have to be mentioned. The thing with the daughter, especially the thing with the gambling. Hello, we can all say this. Look, and even the gambling. He's a human being. Of course he is. We've all been there before. What doesn't have to be gambling? Could be anything. Anything. We make mistakes. I, as you know, have made mistakes in my life. Many, 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 many. But we're human beings. Human beings make mistakes and all of that. So when I say I sympathize with him, he was my friend. I talked about it many a times. I talked about it on Friday night. If you didn't see the broadcast, watch Friday. Watch on Sunday what I said Sunday. Today, after a lot of discussion and talk, I could have just ignored this and gone on, and I'm not asking for any pats on the back, but you come here because you don't believe nor want to believe or have a lot of reservations, say, with the Chronicle, with the Mercury, with the television stations, whatever, because people's perception of certain members of the press themselves, TV stations, radio stations. We don't have any radio here in San Francisco, but you know what I mean. The Chronicle, the Mercury News. Now I understand why there is such skepticism involved with the media these days. And not all of it is right. There's some people out there with paranoia issues and they want to vilify the press. Press, by and large, does a good job, does an interesting job and gives us information, hopefully entertainment, all that. But I do know a sizable amount of the media this day and age, especially with all the cutbacks and the marginalization of media and how they've become basically fossils and a scant image of what they used to be, the fourth estate and all that, and scrutinization of politicians and big companies and all that. Yeah, supposedly now they have an excuse because all the cutbacks, all the layoffs, that kind of a thing. I get all that. But I know a lot of you have very negative opinions of the press. And the information that I described that was not put out, that should have been in this matter, hits at one of the reasons why people have such skepticisms with our so-called mainstream press. So I'm looking at some of the comments here. Yeah, it's a lot, too much to. I mean, look, I'm humbled that all of you have come out here and all that kind of a thing. I don't even post the YouTube comments, most of which I don't even know how to, but I know on my own page. But I did this today, folks, just to become somewhat credible. And ignoring all this would have been a disservice. It's just not the way I ride. Even if been maybe a family friend, family itself, maybe that's another story. But when you're not getting a key bit of information that would be pertinent to someone's financial well-being or not, when it's deliberately perhaps even not put in there and is done as a favor to the interviewee, which some of you also have conveyed to me that you think is the case, then that's not right. It's a campaign. And right now, as of I just checked about an hour ago were damn near $90,000. It's a lot of money. Not humongous, but it's a lot of money. When the initial goal was 60,000, and now it's at $90,000. So, you know, and I again, chuckling a little bit now. I don't want to be self-serving, but one of the reasons why you come here is you want the real McCoy, the real, and I'm saying the real, most of it is real. And I'm not just talking about this subject matter. You want the truth. And the truth is one. It's not your truth or my truth. It's the truth. But when you're looking for transparency and not BS, again, I'm not describing the deal with Ron, but when there's a perception that maybe this was a PR campaign to help somebody out in need, no matter how valiant the reasons are, then there has to be full disclosure in that regard. Not talking about the things I just described. Again, something's wrong with that, and that can't be either. So, and by me ignoring it since Friday, it's not that I did it on purpose. Some of it I just frankly didn't know. I really didn't. And I heard rumors, didn't think much of it. And for all I know, it could have been okay, could have been fine. But talk about it, bring it out in the various articles that were in the Chronicle and in the Mercury. But the fact that you don't even discuss it, it wasn't even talked about. You took this one quote that there's obstacles, but Ron said something, present circumstances have put me in a bad financial light and I need help, kind of a thing. May have been fine and dandy. Okay, well, we don't have to know about it. We still want to help Ron. That's fine. But the fact that it wasn't even addressed, come on. Sorry. So I don't know what else to say. If you want to do a general commentary and talk about this, obviously you're welcome to. I will keep this open. I'm going to stop the broadcast pretty soon, but if I'm here later, if you want to go to my Google page, which is my normal, I take the broadcast here on my YouTube and I send it over to my own page on Google, the blog page, where you can see this in its entirety if you are not watching now live. And again, I see a lot of you are up here on the comments discussing this. Then I will post it on my Google page. If there's information that you have or that I get via you guys, second party, what have. And by the way, I want to reach out to Ron and others, his friends and so forth. If you know information, this is not, again, it's not a witch hunt. This is not I'm not pointing out, excuse me, I'm not going after, and I have discussed, and I think I've tried to be as open about it as possible without vilifying the subject matter, he himself, Ron, or the daughter, or Jan, and by talking about the other side of this and the very, very valid skepticism and information that I've received, that I've been able to confirm that there is a legit amount of concern and kind of question mark. What's going on here? Where is the money going? Is it going strictly to the hospitals? Is it going to gambling debts? Is it going to the daughter who's going to probably need legal help? That kind of thing with attorneys. I think it's open. But I had to talk about it. And again, forgive me if I sound a little, up and down and walking like a tightrope kind of a thing. It's a difficult thing to talk about. You all get that, most of you. And of course, I'm going to have people that are going to MF me either way because they just like doing that. But that's life. That's the internet these days. So I'm Rich Lieberman. If you like this kind of at least aspect of what I do here, please. I don't have GoFundMe, but I just have a normal donation site. I'm not going to plug that now, but I guess I just did. So anyway, but become a member of my YouTube channel, and I most certainly, if the information is coming forth, if there's new developments, or I know people who follow me. Some of them have their own investigative, you know, uh, manners and sites and that kind of a thing. Just credit me, though. Tell me, you saw it on my site. So, and thanks to Dave Neal, whoever he is, for I guess alluding to me in some of his investigations. David Neal, whoever he is, I don't know who he is, but apparently he's got a large following. So I'll be back. If there's nothing to talk about, I won't be back. But go to my X account, and I'll plug the next time I'm on. But thank you for watching, and thank you for listening. Have a great day.